Welcome to the Mind, Body and Soul Show with artist, author and personal development coach John Morris. Inspiring, motivating and educating you on your journey to find balance in the craziness of day-to-day life. Learn from and listen to a man who has a wealth of life experience, from business to bodybuilding, artist to author, and has learned to deal with his own physical and mental wellness. But that's not all. Each week, John will be joined by guests from around the world and all walks of life, where they too will share their knowledge and expertise. And now, we welcome you to today's episode of the Mind, Body and Soul Show with your host, John Morris.
Okay, folks, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Mind, Body and Soul Show, the show that helps you find balance in the craziness of day-to-day life. And I am, as always, your lovable host, John Morris. Well, folks, I'm really excited. As you can tell, I'm excited every single time we do shows like this. But I got to be honest with you, I am all over the place today, which is something that isn't normal for me. Because there are so many different things happening all at the one time. We've got deliveries happening left, right, and center. We've got paintings that are leaving left, right, and center. We've got packages and parcels and all sorts of stuff. And I was even contemplating doing a musical number for today because we've got a Christmas concert coming up December 17th, which is going to be a charity fundraiser. And it's going to be happening all over social media. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, we had so much craziness going on. As you can see here, I'm working with a different microphone. We're doing all sorts of different things. So you need to let me know, folks, if you can hear me loud and clear, if I'm coming through and it's all good. But hey, we're here. And the amazing thing about these things, problems are just, I guess situations without solutions yet. And our job, is to navigate them as best we can to find solutions to them. So I'm not going to be doing a musical number right now, unfortunately, but maybe a little bit more time, we can do one next time. Anyway, folks, today I am really excited because my guest actually has jumped in at the last minute, and I'm really thankful that she has, because you talk about everything being divine and meant to be in the way that it is. There is no doubt about that at all. My guest today loves to live life out loud. She is a jubilant motivational speaker, personal coach, author, and educator who has overcome so much in her life, from living in an orphanage to a childhood of poverty, abuse, growing up, left, right, and center, foster homes, families, and all before she reached the tender age of 12 years old. By the time she was 14 years old, she found herself as a mother. She raised 4 children, and through hard work, painful decisions, she's gone from surviving off welfare and benefits to earning a university degree in public administration. And she not only did that, she pulled herself out of poverty in order to show others how to do the same. And she has gone on to thrive. She really has, opening up her own businesses and doing so many different things. And it is my awesome pleasure today to welcome the awesome Cosette Leary. Cosette, welcome here. How are you doing today?
Hello, John.
Hello. We are live.
Excited to be here with you. Good to see you.
It is awesome to have you here. How are you doing?
Oh my God. Thank you for such an incredible introduction. Thank you. Seriously speaking. Oh my gosh. Thank you.
I've become the introduction guy for whatever reason, and I guess because it's so full of energy, and I love doing them as well. So it is awesome to have you here. How are you doing today?
I am doing super duper fabulous. Yes, I am. I'm excited to just be alive today. Just very
Brilliant.
grateful for another wonderful opportunity to just live out loud and to the fullest. It's just great. It is great.
I love the energy that's there from you for sure. I've seen some of the talks and things that you've done online, and it has been phenomenal to say the least. I'm really excited to unpack your journey and your story in the time that we have together. First of all, I mean, you find yourself, I suppose, probably your first consciousness is, as an orphan. And this is, I believe, of all the shows that I've done over the last 2 years, your unique experience living in foster homes and other areas is the first time that I've ever been able to sit down and do an interview with somebody to talk about that, because the children and teenagers that I've worked with in the past, some of them had come from foster homes and all sorts of different things. And it was just, it was a different perspective. So how did you come to find yourself, in an orphanage?
Oh, okay. So we're talking 1985, and child abuse was not on the forefront at that time. And I had ran away twice from my home with my biological mother and her husband. However, again, child abuse was not on the forefront. So local authorities really didn't know what to do with what I was saying was happening to me. So they would return me back home. Finally, and I don't even know if finally is like really the right way to say it, because who wants to be beat? Don't say, finally, I got the butt kicking of a lifetime. No, I don't want to say that, but I got beat by my mom and her husband, and those were fresh, new wounds and bruises. And I ran away that same night, and I was able to present myself to the police with actual real time cuts and bruises from being beat. And that's when they said something is really going on here. Let's get her to UC Davis Medical Center. So I went there via ambulance. But I'd like to back up a little bit on that also. The interesting thing is that I grew up in urban ghetto, and I had not been exposed to people who were not of color. Be it I was used to being around African American people, people of Asian culture, Hispanic, didn't know much about Caucasian people. And that night that I ran away for the third time and was taken seriously, it was by a white police officer. And I didn't know that white people could turn red. Their skin can do that. And the way I found that out was the officer asked me, "Can you please tell me who did this to you?" And I said, through busted lips and swollen face, I said, "My mom and her
Wow.
husband." And he looked at me. He said, "Did I hear you say your mom and her husband?" And I said, "Yes." And that man turned red right in front of me. I mean, his skin changed. And he clicked the little thing on his shoulder and he said, "Go arrest the parents. I have the minor in custody. We are going to UC Davis Medical Center." And the reason why I bring that part of the story up is in my country, in America, because I believe you're in Scotland,
I am
right?
indeed. Yes, the sun is
Okay.
set.
Hey, in my country, racial tensions have been brought
Mm,
to the forefront like never
yeah.
before. And at 12 years old, my first real introduction, real interaction with a Caucasian person was someone who was so passionate about saving my life that he turned red right in front of me.
Wow.
So that was my beginning of going into the system.
Mhm.
And when I was in the hospital, they took pictures of me with a big camera with a huge light bulb in it. I had never even seen cameras like that before. They were having me turn around and all of that. And so the officer came back to see me at the hospital. And I asked him, I said, "Are you going to make it where I don't have to go back?"
Mhm.
And he said, "Yes, I am." And I hugged him and I said, "Thank you." And then I got put in a receiving home. From the hospital, I got placed in what is called a receiving home where you
Mhm.
wait for a placement.
Mm.
And I'm 12 years old at that time.
Wow.
And I'm waiting for a placement. I believe I lived there about pretty close to, if not 6 months. And from there, I went to the orphanage, which was called the
Right.
Sacramento Children's Home.
Wow. I mean, that's incredible to go through that. And it's, folks, it's not just a case of, leaving your home, but to give an indication, a lot of people are leaving their security. A lot of people are leaving, all they've ever known. And, for you to do that, that tells me the level of fear and abuse and everything that was going on back at the home, that you'd rather be somewhere completely alien, that, you didn't want to, or that you didn't know anything. Or anybody. And yeah, I mean, that's a rough thing, for sure. I mean, how did that change and if it did, your perception of the world? Because sometimes we only know, what we know in life, and if you don't know any different, sometimes it's a bit like, well, it was all on you. But for you, how did it change your perception?
Brilliant question. Thank
I tried.
you. Oh, you do well. My perception was that I had been given freedom.
Right.
That was my first perception, safety and freedom.
Hmm.
My second, being only 12 years old, I felt that possibility of saving myself and my life and everything was right there. But I was always afraid they'd come back and get me, that for a long, long time. The other feelings were, how am I going to grow up? Who am I outside of that home, outside of the nucleus culture within that home? And of course, I'm living with over 100 other kids, and we all got backgrounds and stories. So my perception at the time was, thank God I've been saved. Now, with that being said, I had no clue what I was in store for many, many years.
A little note there, the environments of the ghettos and things,
Mm,
because again, and I've had the privilege of being able to travel around a lot of different places. I've made friends from literally all walks of life, and from the richest to the poorest, to some of the toughest and meanest, to some of the toughest and meanest that are the nicest. And it's a very different culture.
mm,
Over here in the United Kingdom, you've got little pockets, and cities where there's the gang culture, but it's almost like in every state. Something when I was in the United States in 2012, 2011, that was something that was evident. You could drive down one street and it'd be beautiful and glorious and affluent houses and everything, and then you drive down the other, and it's, again,
mm,
you know what's going on. It's I mean, this is an amazing thing that you're even able to talk about now and to pull yourself out of.
mm,
Um, how did that affect you and those experiences from a mindset perspective? Obviously, I'm assuming at least there would be, a lot of nights with bad dreams, and a lot of nights,
mm.
very, very insecure. But one of the things that I found very interesting, and maybe you can speak to this, with the kids that I worked with, was they seemed to take care of themselves because all
Mhm.
they had to depend on was themselves, really.
Yes, it does afford one an acquired strength,
Hmm.
that's for sure. And the rage and the determination becomes a combined mixture. You're like not wanting to listen to authority figures. That's for daggum sure. You're like, I don't want anybody to tell me what to do anymore. I'm tired of the world telling me what to do. So with that, I I wanted my own identity. I had been raised in what a lot of people considered an occult religion in my mother's home, and it had taken away so much of who I was. But the incredible thing about it, and scientific research proves this, that within a child's first few primary years, their personality is really developed. And I would love to honor my father, biological father, and his mother for the strength in the character that I had to persevere through the challenges of being such a young girl and having to grow into a teenager, a teenage mom, a young woman, and into a mature woman. While my mother and her household was chaotic to say the least, my mom and my father had been together up until I was 7 years old.
Right.
And my father always made it very well known to me that I was smart, gifted, talented, beautiful. We would do so many wonderful things together, and he gave me the gift of imagination. Now, my father also passed away when I was 12 years old.
Right.
And so I knew that life lesson early on of losing my lifeline, if you will.
Yeah.
But being in all of that, with all of those different emotions that I was having as a young ward of the court, I really was just looking to own myself. I didn't want people to tell me what to do or how to be. I just wanted to know me. And that in itself would be a huge undertaking, to say the least.
Absolutely, and it is, and you know that the statistics show, just to further what you were saying there, because you know, I think it's between ages 3 and 5 that's when you absorb the most, and that's where you start really developing your personality. You can tell I've been studying stuff, but you know, and that's where a lot of that stuff comes from, for sure. You know, my wife lost her father, sorry, when she was 18 years old. You know, again, and she always said to me at such a young age, it really does something to the person that perhaps it doesn't in the same way when they're a little bit older. But she, you know, and you know, I've heard other people say it, and it was interesting that you said it there. You know, sometimes you feel robbed almost of the time that you had, or you should have had, and certainly in your mind, you know, that you didn't get. And that's for sure. And then obviously the entire world changes for you. You know, moving on a little bit, you know, when you're going into all these different foster homes and all these different places, what was, number one, what was that like? But number two, it must have felt like being thrown backwards and forwards a little bit. What was going on?
In a nutshell, I nicknamed myself Nobody's Child.
Wow.
That's what I called myself, because it was always made evident anytime I had an opinion or a disagreement with the foster family, that there were 50 other kids waiting in line for my spot, that all they had to do was call my social worker right now and I'd be out of here. That always let me know that no family belonged to me. They were not my family, and I wasn't theirs either. I was always a temporary shadow. And so I nicknamed myself Nobody's Child. I wanted to be loved, of course, and I wanted to be valued and appreciated. And that sent me down some very dark roads. Again, I became pregnant at 14 with my oldest daughter, and she is absolutely magnificent. Oh my God. and so are my other children. You know, I have beautiful children and love them all to pieces, and they're amazing. But at 14, I found myself pregnant with my oldest daughter, looking for someone to really love me, you know, and no one was teaching me sexual education or anything like that. And I was built like a brick house at such a young age. So I attracted men.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I could make someone fall in love with me if I was just so wonderful in the bed. That's exactly how I thought. Well, that wasn't, of course, the truth, but I did get my baby, you know, and so, yes, I got bounced from placement to placement, from home to home. And again, I always knew I didn't belong to anybody, you know. My biological grandmother on my father's side was still living, and I am named after her. And she had always been in my life. she had always been a constant, and she was waging war with my mother because my mom lived in California and I grew up in California. So jurisdiction was California over me. And my grandmother lived in the state of Washington on the West Coast and the Northwest and had no jurisdiction over me. And my grandmother was talking with social workers and whoever else, that my granddaughter wants to come live with me. I want my granddaughter to come live with me. And my mother was like, absolutely not. And it was just a lot. So by the time I did get to move in with my grandmother, I was now 15 years old and 8 months pregnant. And when I got off the plane in Portland, Oregon at the PDX, for the first time in several years, I saw my grandma and her twin sister and my cousin Linda. And my grandma said, girl, you was big with that baby. And I said, because I was full of baby. I was full of baby. And a month later, my daughter was born, and it was a beautiful experience to be able to have my grandmother and her twin sister there at the birth of my child, and to have them tell me, you can do this. And what's really interesting about me and my grandmother, we're both named Cosette, and she had my dad when she was 15.
Wow.
And I had my daughter when I was 15.
How incredible that is. I mean, like I said, just seeing your energy and your face light up when you remember that as well. It's like, okay, it's not the ideal situation, as you said.
No.
But especially at that time, this is what we want to, because we work with a lot of teenagers, and I certainly have in the past, and that's almost what we want to emphasize, that things weren't always as they were today. I still remember a time before the internet, and the kids just think, man, you must be old. And it's like, no, the internet just hasn't been around that long. And, I remember a time before Facebook, and they were like, are you serious? That existed? And I'm like, yes. But, Facebook's what, 10, 15 years old, whatever it is now. But, for what you described there, it's a very interesting experience. But I suppose on a serious note, it never ceases to amaze me now more than ever. People, we all have the fundamental needs, and they go from everything from, need to feel valued, need to feel secure, safe, and all of the other stuff. There's 7, primary fundamental ones. But one of the ones that I always feel that seems to really dictate a lot to teenagers now is the need to, for attention, or to feel that sense of value and that sense of belonging. And again, one of the studies that I have done has literally been about the lengths that people are willing to go to feel valued. And, what you shared there very, very wonderfully. Thank you for sharing that as well. But this is a common thing that's happening over and over again now. And it seems to be almost conditioned now into people's mind that, hey, it's fine, go ahead, just do whatever, and change your life, obviously, because having a child changes your life in a really dramatic way, for sure. And you've got all this stuff, you've got all these different things that you're going through, and now you've got a child. What on earth was that like for you?
Well,
that was a great reaction. I love it. That's the reaction.
Look, so, I was a single mom. Her father did not want to participate in the upbringing at the time of the child. And I was heartbroken because I was definitely in love with her father. And I had this beautiful baby, and I'm a single mom now. So dealing with the heartache, it took me 10 years to get over that. I was on a 10-year rebound. So by the time I was 24, 25, I was starting to come out of that. So for those first 10 and a half years, I loved my daughter immensely, of course. And then I begat other children during that time too, still looking for love in all the wrong places. And I felt extremely lonely. And I felt so burdened and so guilty because I felt like I had brought forth these beautiful children, and all I had to hand them was poverty. It wasn't fun at all. And I didn't know where to go to learn how to thrive.
Yeah.
That wasn't something taught from the welfare department. The interesting thing is, going back to my father again, he had already instilled in my mind who I was,
Right.
despite any circumstances that I may have lived through or was currently at the time living in. I was larger than life. My daddy had told me I was, and I knew that. And kind of to backtrack a little bit, a kind of really funny story that will kind of speak to that is, when I was 15, I wanted to get emancipated. I was sick and tired of everybody telling me where to live, what to do, ruining my life over and over and over again. And literally, I did not have the best experiences with the homes and things. I had a great experience when I lived with my grandma, but I was so in love with my daughter's dad that I was beckoning myself back to California. Because, oh my God, we've got to get back together somehow, please. Please, take me and the child. He didn't, he didn't take me and the child. He took somebody else. And then me and the child were out in California again. Now I'm pissed off again. You know what I'm mad at? Like, you son of a biscuit. I said something to the child, and instead you take another woman. I can't stand you. You know, so it was just like all kind of stuff. And so an interesting thing, I go back, when I'm 15 and 16, I'm starting talking about I want to be emancipated. And so I'm in California, and I'm just frustrated like you wouldn't. I'm sick of foster home. Like, I've got a child of my own. I'm a mother, for Pete's sake. I want to live in my own somewhere without all of these people, without them all telling me all of what I cannot be, basically, you know. And so they called a major meeting of the social workers and the directors of the social service stuff that dealt with kids like me. And I was at the meeting. And I was jubilant back then and full of personality. And I was explaining to them that I was willing to get a job and take care of my daughter. And we were just having a great conversation. I was explaining all of the reasons why I should be emancipated. And they agreed that I brought really valid points to the table. And I remember the director leaned back in his chair. I will never forget it. And he put his hands behind his head, like, you know. And he said, Cosette, let me tell you something. It's not going to be ultimately up to us. It's going to be up to a judge whether or not you get emancipated.
Right.
I'm going to tell you, if it was up to me, he said, the way you can sell bullshit, he said it. He said, you are so good. I would emancipate you right now if I could. Wow. And I started laughing, and I put my elbows on the table, and I leaned into him like this. I said, let me tell you something. I said, I could sell a dead man a coffin. And the whole room started cracking up. I mean, and he said, I believe you could. And so, you know, I got emancipated at 16 years old. I did win my emancipation. But still, in what becoming a parent brought to the forefront, along with everything else, very challenging. Well, again, I felt a lot of guilt because it was very hard to provide for my children. And being that I had a big imagination and I was bigger than life, I also had a lot of compassion for people who were overlooked, because I had been overlooked so many times in my life. And so I wanted to be able to do something in my life that made other people feel worthwhile, underdogs, the unsung. And so I would go to my welfare workers and everybody, and I'd be like, I want to get a degree. They'd be like, that's nice. Let's help you fill out this job application for Target so you can work in retail. And I would say, well, working in retail is not going to pay me enough to take care of me and my kids.
Yeah.
They're like, that's true. But they wouldn't. They're like, that's true. But if you get a job and you start to get a constant income, then you could find ways to go to school and work. I was like, okay. But I want to get a degree that is going to give me the authority to be able to give a good life to my kids and me, and also live from my heart. Yes, we hear you.
But it wasn't really in their plans.
Well, they would make you take these what they call personality tests. They last on a computer for about 2 hours, and I took about 3 of them during my whole decades of welfare nurse. And they all would always come back with the same thing. They would say, I would make a great attorney. I would make a great politician. I would make a great public speaker. I would make a great author. These were, and so I would always bring up, well, you remember that personality test I took? And they're like, yes, we do. And you've got a great personality. Well, right now we need you to get a job at Winky Dinky Burger. I feel like I don't want to work at Winky Dinky Burger. So I went through this with them for years, and what that was doing to my self-esteem. My kids were getting older constantly. I was getting older constantly. Inflation was going up constantly.
Yep.
And we lived off of a welfare check that was $742 a month. A family of 5.
Wow.
I didn't even crack 1,000 a month, you know? And I did have subsidized housing, thank God. But I wanted more, John.
Yeah, definitely. And more is what you got for sure. We're going to quickly jump to commercial break. And when we come back, you'll hear the second part of Cosette's story and so much more. We'll see you in a few minutes.
Hello and welcome to the Los Angeles Tribune. Since 1886, our name has been a part of the world of journalism. We have earned a reputation for being a publication that practices integrity, authenticity, and responsibility. For general inquiries, contact today. Thank you on behalf of the Los Angeles Tribune team.
It's that time of year again! A time of lights, trees, and presents galore. It's also a time filled with stress, worry, and frantic panic in the search for that special gift. What do you buy the person who has everything? The answer, you buy them something that can't be found on the high street or in any shop, but only by special order. You buy them something made with love. Through the power of a paintbrush and the magic of some paint, I create paintings for people from all over the world and in all shapes and sizes. Portraits, pets, landscapes, seascapes, and so much more. Just like Santa, I too love to spread the gift of joy to people all over the world. Christmas can be an immensely stressful time of year. Will they like it? Won't they like it? Well, when you order with us, you're ordering something that your loved one is guaranteed to love. We take all the stress away for you. It is as simple as 1, 2, 3. Send an email with the picture you desire. Choose the size and frame of your choosing, and we will take care of the rest. Shipping is even on us. And if you're looking for something even more unique, why not come and visit our online shop where you can order my best-selling self-help book, which is packed with my artwork. Why not even order my CD and even prints and gift certificates and so much more awaits behind those doors. So what are you waiting for? Come and visit us and click on that link. We're looking forward to hearing from you and helping in any way that we can. And from all of us here, we wish you a very, very, very Merry Christmas. Okay, folks, we are back live here on the LA Tribune, Mind, Body, and Soul with John Morris. So we are going to be continuing our conversation all about the life of Cosette Leary just momentarily, and we've been having a phenomenal time. If you just joined us, you need to go back and you need to rewatch the full thing because it's an incredible story. But before we do that, folks, if you are interested in sponsoring the show and getting your message out there to over 50 million homes, both on the LA Tribune network and also on the Roku TV network and all over social media, then get in touch with me at thejohnmorris.co.uk. I would love to hear from you, and put together something very, very special to you and for you to help you get your message out there to over 50 million homes worldwide. You can get in touch with me. We've got a couple of places left, and I would love to hear from you. With that now said, let's continue our interview. And as we're picking up with a world of wildness and fun as we go along. Cosette, welcome back.
Thank you.
It is great. Yeah, when we left off, you were talking about how you were supporting a family of 5. You guys are, first of all, that's a miracle in itself. Second of all, you're living off welfare, which was breaking less than $1,000 a month by what, $350 sometimes. Now I know the majority of people that I've worked with. There's a few in the in New York, in Rhode Island as well, that had said they need at least $100,000 a year to be able to live in that area. So that gives you an indication, folks, of the kind of deficit that Cosette was in and where some things are at now. But how did you even begin to make sense of all of that? And how did you begin even to survive, on $750 a month?
Again, I did have subsidized housing, so that did play a huge part of that. They paid a huge bulk of my rent, and I paid 30%. So that was a saving grace. Let me tell you that. This question is really a really deep and great question. The how. And I'm so glad you said how, because so many people say, don't worry about the how. Just go.
It's all about the how.
Right. If I could high five you right now, what the heck? It's all about it. Right. Okay. Thank you. Somebody gets it. Okay. It is, you need to have a model. You need to have a blueprint. You need to have a plan.
Always a plan.
Okay. And so for me, I didn't really know how to design it. And again, like I said, my kids were getting older. I was getting older. We remained poor. I was getting extremely desperate. And I had a pivot moment. I had a housing worker. That's what we call over here, a housing worker, Section 8 housing worker. And this particular woman really began to change the dynamic of my life. I don't even think she was aware of how much at first. I would come to her office in the beginning stages to sign paperwork in her cubicle and make sure I'm still poor enough to be poor and, all the things, eligibility for this, that, and the third. And I would notice when I would be in her cubicle that she would have these pictures with pushpin tags up against her cubicle of a very cute little boy and a very cute little girl. And the little girl would be in a ballerina tutu, and the little boy had soccer uniform on and everything. And I would stare at those pictures a lot of times when I would be in her cubicle, because I wondered, what was it about her life that those children were getting to do those things to the point where they would have a nice picture of themselves doing it. But I never wanted to ask her because I was already too dead-gum ashamed of myself, my kid. My son would be in an umbrella stroller with Mitch Mac socks and Tootsie Roll sticky fingers with lint on them and stuff. And I'm looking at kids on the, her cubicle looking really nice. But one day I finally got the courage, and this is after we had started kind of developing a relationship. And I said, are those your grandchildren? And she beamed. I mean, her face just, yeah, that's my grandson and my granddaughter. I was like, oh, they're really cute. And I said, it looks like your grandson's in some kind of sports. And she goes, yes, he's in soccer. And my little granddaughter, she's in gymnastics and ballet. And I said, how do you get your kids in that?
Mm-hmm.
And it must have been something, John, about that question, because the minute I asked that question, she looked at me as if for the first time she saw and heard my disadvantage. And the sincerity of me asking her, how do you, get them in that? Because I didn't know. And she said, oh, well, through Parks and Rec. I said, what is Parks and Rec? She said, Parks and Recreation, community centers. And I was like, don't know.
Yeah.
And she said, you don't know about those things? And I said, no. And then she said, Cosette, what do you want to do with your life? And I said to her, I don't want to be poor anymore. And I want to help other people not be poor too. I said, I want to get a powerful degree. And I want to make something happen on this planet.
Yeah.
And she said, you know what? I don't know how we can get you to do that, but I want to help you do that. So from that moment on, I was like a bee to honey to her. And I would just pop up in her office. I'd get on the bus, the city bus, and just ride down to the housing authority and be like, is Gail in? They'd be like, yeah, she is. You have an appointment? No, I just need to talk to her about something. A little something. you know. And so we started really getting to know each other. And she started listening to my interests. And that's when I started feeling my value through her. And it gave me a courage. And I often tell people, let somebody borrow your courage until they have their own. Go ahead, loan it to them. It's okay. They'll give it back. They'll give it back
really
even better
amazing.
than when you got it. Okay. So I was getting courage from my conversations with her about the what ifs and the how to's and what's the possibilities and all of these things. And then one day I popped down at her office as usual. And she came and got me. But I noticed something, John. She had a huge pink and black and gray ring on her neck. I mean, that sucker was big.
Wow.
And I was like, so when we got in her cubicle, I said, Gail, what's up with your neck? And she said,
Yeah.
I said, what is that on your neck? And she said, oh, don't worry about that. I'm going to beat this thing. I got good doctors. And I said, doctors? And I said, Gail, what's wrong? And she said, well, I got a little touch of the breast cancer, but I'm going to make it. And I know you didn't come down here to talk to me about that. What do you want to talk? Let's talk about you. And I was stunned a little bit because I knew cancer. I'd heard of it. And I've heard that it a lot of times takes people away. But she said she's got chemo, and I knew chemo went with what I had heard about cancer. But we went on and talked about me that day. And I was telling her, I've been checking out some things, looking at some schools and stuff and, this and that and the other. And I wanted to be a politician. And I knew that already then. And I was like, I've heard of this thing called poli-sci. I want to get a degree in poli-sci. And so we were talking about that. Well, as time went on, I'd go down and pop down, and I noticed she started wearing this horrible wig. Oh my God. It looked worse than Carol Burnett with that mop on her head. I was like, oh my God, I got to do something about this. But I didn't know about Caucasian people hair. So I went to the local library and I typed in luxury wigs for white women. And it brought up Paula Young wigs. Now, I had known enough about ethical practices that you're not supposed to give anyone in street level bureaucracy a gift more than $12 worth. Sometimes they say 25. It just depends, but mostly the $12 mark. But I couldn't keep looking at her with that that wig on her head. It was killing me. And so I looked through the wigs, and wouldn't you know it, I found one with the same exact color of her real hair and the haircut style that she always had. And it was $75.
Wow.
I knew I was way above the ethic line, but I can't keep looking at this head. I was like, this ain't good. No. So I took some money from my light bill and I ordered this thing. And it came in the mail, and I was so excited. And I grabbed my umbrella stroller, and I grabbed my little boy, because the other kids, they was in school during those hours. And we headed down to the housing authority. And I says, Gail here. And they said, do you got an appointment? No. Well, we're going to call her. You're going to sit in the waiting room. Okay. So they called her, and she come out. She said, hey, Cosette. And I said, look, we need to go to the bathroom. She said, what? I said, we need to go to the bathroom, and you got the code to the bathroom. I don't know the code on the door. You do, and we need to go to the bathroom. She said, why do we need to go? I said, just come on. And she said, okay, we're going to the bathroom. And so she pushed the code, and she opened it. I said, wait. I said, we need to look for feet. She said, look for feet. I said, hold on. I went and looked under every stall. I got to the left. I said, all clear. Come on in. She said, what is going on? And I said, look, I got something for you. I said, nobody can know. I said, because it's really not what I'm supposed to get. I said, but look. And I took out the box, and she read the label, Paula Young Wigs. And she said, what have you done? And I said, it's okay. I said, Gail, I don't like the wig you're wearing. I said, I found one that's just like your hair was. And I took the net. We opened the box, and I took the netting off of it, and it just fell down like torn silk. And she looked at me, and I said, here, take that off. And I put it on her head. We were looking in the mirror, and she started crying. She said, how much did you pay for this? I said, that don't matter. I said, now look, I'm going to go out first, so nobody see us come out together with your new hair. And I'm going to go to the bus stop and go on home. I said, you wait a few minutes and you come out the bathroom and go on. And I took the box and everything with me back home because I wasn't going to throw it in the trash there. I didn't want nobody to know anything. And she had her hair back. I loved her that much for seeing me and loaning me her confidence. About a month later, I got a call from the housing authority, the secretary. She said, Cosette, are you sitting down? And I said, no, but I can. What's going on? Why do I need to sit down? And she said, I need to tell you something. Immediately, John, I knew. I said, Gail? She said, we lost her on Tuesday, and we know how much you loved her. We wanted you to know. I said, I have to hang up now. She said, I know. And I'm going to tell you something, John. I went outside, and I looked up at the sky, and I pointed to the sky. And I said, Gail, I know you're up there. I said, I'm going to finish what we started.
Yeah.
I'm going to beat poverty. I said, I'm going to do it. And I love you. And I know that you'll be able to see me. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, I'm going to finish it. I'm going to finish it. I'm going to end poverty in me and my kids' life. And from that moment on, I became extremely tenacious.
It's an amazing thing. And, you know, I mean, the way that I look, because I get asked about this all the time, especially by young kids, you know, when they say, well, you know, their brother got sick or their mom or dad passed away and things. And I've always been asked, you know, what do you say to that? And I say, you know, well, there's a number of different things that you can say, a number of different things that you can quote and all that kind of stuff. But for me, you know, one of the I suppose my favorite Native American teachings was that there is no death. There is just a changing of worlds. And, you know, and if we are all divine spirits, which I believe us to be, all eternal, then, you know, that fits the bill. And because I've got to be honest, you know, I jotted down several notes there. And one of them, as I sit in your presence, I'm very much aware, and this is the first time that I've ever felt this with all the guests that I've had on the show, that I'm actually in the presence of a very, very special and divine spirit right now, which is very special. Folks, yeah, again, when it's live, it's, it's as live as life can be. And, I'm always open to these things, as you guys know, but I think to comfort anybody that's, going through what Cosette or other people have gone through, what I find interesting with the welfare system worldwide is oftentimes it's designed by a lot of people to keep the person in poverty, just to give you enough to survive, basically, but not to thrive. And then you got to figure it out. And it's never, ever, I can't do this. It's always, how do I do this? And the crazy thing is, as soon as you ask that question, this is a teaching, folks. You can write it down, you can put it on your walls, paint it on your walls if you want to, paint it all over the streets. It's always a case of when the student is ready, the teachers will appear. Cosette was ready, and she was blessed beyond belief. So
Yeah.
I'll go cry in the corner in a moment. We have got some questions to get to. I'm going to get some in a moment. I'm okay if we run long because this is it's a powerful thing for sure. So you now get to that point, because that was one of my next questions. How, or when was that light bulb moment that you were like, and what an incredible journey for sure. You go through the university degree, you get your degree, and then it goes off into something else. Tell us what happens.
So this is where the story starts to get beautiful, because of course we've done a lot of the background, but this is where the joy starts coming in. Gail had loaned me that confidence, and when she went on to another dimension, like I said, I went out there and I pointed to the sky and I said, I'm going to finish what we started. I did not feel that she was ultimately never, ever anymore. She was just somewhere else in a different way, but I felt she could hear, see, smell, touch, whatever, she could still be in my life, and she still is. And I was bound and determined to make her proud and to make myself proud. So I started writing letters to CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. I would go to the local commons, the library, and I would read business journals, entrepreneur magazines, and I would read people's articles about themselves. And one day I was working in a daycare center, and I came across a magazine called Working Mother magazine, and I had never heard of that magazine before, but I was a working mother in a daycare system, even though I was eking out an existence still. And I was intrigued with the cover. It said 3 women who really know how to raise a ruckus. And so I wanted to read the articles on the 3 women, and I did. And one particular woman really stood out to me because of the fact that she had recognized how difficult it was for a waitress at a restaurant that her and her family were having dinner at, how the waitress was just going back and forth, working so hard for tips. And she mentioned in the article that when she got home, she couldn't get the waitress off her mind. And she said she thought to herself as she was putting on her pajamas, if it's that hard for a woman working, what must it be like for a woman on welfare? I could not believe, I reread that sentence at least 5 times because I had never seen anyone in print, other than a sanctions letter from the welfare department, mention a woman on welfare and what it must be like for us. So I did the noble, upright, upstanding thing with that information, with that magazine. John, let me tell you, I did not waste that magazine. I did what was right.
Yeah.
In my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I stole that magazine and took it home. I ain't gonna lie.
I jotted down a note to myself there, and it's from the book The Alchemist, which is one of my favorite books this year. And it's got one specific thing in it called Notice the Omens. And I was going through the whole thing of notice the omens, because I stole the magazine. And I was just, Well, there's your omens. I would look at that as a divine blessing.
Yes, 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 yes.
Do
I took that
continue.
magazine. I took it home and I dialed the information number 411 and I asked for the physical address of her company.
Yeah.
And I wrote her a letter. And my heart was beating so crazy when I was, writing the letter because I was like, oh my God, she's this huge CEO. I'm sure somebody looks through her mail before she looks through it. And I was like, dear God, I hope you can find a way to help this letter reach her because she's already looking at women in welfare and I'm a woman on welfare. And I don't remember the whole letter, but I never forgot the first paragraph. And the first paragraph said, I know it must be really strange to you to receive a letter from a stranger so far away. And I know that we have never had a cup of coffee. We've never exchanged Christmas recipes. We have never met each other, but we do have something in common. You care about women on welfare, and I'm a woman on welfare. Will you help me, please? And to make a very long story short, she whipped out her American Express card after a couple of months and she bought me a round trip ticket out to her company. She put me in a Hilton and she taught me how to get higher education. And I started going to community college. She taught me what a Pell Grant was because I didn't know about that and all of these financial aid for school. And I went on because I know our time is going to start winding down. I went on to acquire my degree in public administration. I graduated summa cum laude from my university. I remained on the dean's list consecutively 36 months in a row.
Wow.
And I went on to serve as an intern staff member in a senatorial office. That got me to one of the largest think tanks in the United States, Brookings Institution, where I took senior executive classes there, met one of my best mentors who's still in my life to this day. She called me 2 years later and asked me would I like to come out on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. I said yes, and threw away all my furniture. Thank God a couple of my kids was already grown. The other ones that didn't, I said, picked up the phone. Baby daddy, you about to take this kid. But let me tell you something. I've been raised for a lot and I got a golden opportunity. You about to take your kid. Click. Suck them last two today, daddies. I was on a plane. No, wait a minute. Took the train. Look, done got excited. We remember plane, train, automobiles. Good God. I was on the train out to Washington, D.C., and I had the honor of serving in a congressional office out there on the Hill and Rayburn building.
Wow.
Learned a lot about public policy, worked at Johns Hopkins University as a custodian at night, worked on the Hill during the day, did my homework in Bloomberg Library on Johns Hopkins campus. I remember when I first touched the glass of Johns Hopkins, I couldn't believe it on the door because they had the insignias. And I was putting my hand all around, like, oh my God, I'm touching Johns Hopkins. And I never took anything for granted. Yeah. I knew I was so blessed to have the education, the opportunity. I befriended some very powerful people at that university at Hopkins, graduated, had all my things, came back to my state, Washington State, which is different, of course, than the District of Columbia. Yeah. And that's a whole nother story because I found myself homeless for 2 years.
Wow.
From 2015 to 2017, with graduating summa cum laude, had served in a senatorial and congressional office, was alumna of one of our nation's highest think tanks. In fact, Barack Obama, when he got elected, he came to Brookings Institution and asked for assistance in picking his executive cabinet. And now I'm homeless.
Wow.
Couldn't understand that to save my life, but that's another story. But I will say now, because we're going to take a big leap from that. Now I am a motivational transformational speaker. I am a certified women's empowerment coach. I'm a powerful one. I am an author. I am a mentor. And I am a fantastic host of women live events and summits. And I am unapologetically out of my mind with yes, you can.
I love it.
Whatever your life is, I went from an abusive home being beat like you wouldn't believe, to being a ward of the court, to being out here, to being pregnant at 14, to being left by the baby daddy, to being all kind of things, to grow up with more children or more poverty, to losing Gail, to go to another dimension, to everything. But I never lost sight of my core passion. And if I could say anything to anybody who's watching this phenomenal show, take stock in yourself and ask yourself, are you living the life your heart wants? Because this is not a practice run.
Yeah.
We don't get to become 92 years old and say, I know everything now, let me go back. And I'll say this very quickly. The reason why I know my grandmother that I am named after, when I was 16, one day we were washing dishes. And this is the prologue, however you say it, in my book. It talks about this. The first thing anybody reads is this about me and my grandmother. When I was 16, we were washing dishes in the kitchen. And she said, baby, mama is so tired. I'm going to go sit down in a big chair. You finish up those dishes. I said, okay, mama. And we were laughing and gossiping about other family relatives, because there was a lot of competition in that side of my family. I ain't going to get into that. But everybody thought they was better than the other one, okay? And everybody thought their kids looked better than the other people's kids and everything else. Kind of still do, but anyway, so grandma goes and sits in the chair, and I'm still laughing and gossiping. Ain't that right, mama? Blah, 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 that. And I noticed that I don't hear her laughing anymore. So I turned around, I said, mama, ain't that right? I said, mama. When I turned around, she was gripping the arms on her recliner chair, and she was crying. And I'm like, my mind at 16 was like, how are we going from laughing to crying? And I ran over to her chair. I said, mama, what's wrong? And she was trying to tell me, but she was crying so hard that her words were like, and I was like, mama, take a breath, breathe, what's wrong? And when she finally could say what she needed to say, John, she grabbed my hand and she said, I didn't do half of what I wanted with my life.
Yeah.
And then she made me promise her to do everything within my power to live the life that I want. And at 16, I couldn't even understand the caution of her warning. But I promised her that I would. But I hadn't lived long. I didn't know life. But one thing that I cherish, before my grandma died, she said to me, I can't believe it. One of my babies serving on the Capitol in my country, and I seen a black man be elected to president.
Mm-hmm.
She said, now I could go on to glory and I'm all right. I didn't live long enough to see something.
That's incredible. It really is. It's interesting the fact that she used those words, because I was sitting on the edge of the bed this morning, putting my socks on, and that was something that really came into my mind was, for whatever reason, when I showed up on this planet, I didn't think the same way as other people did. They'd sit there in the Catholic Church, they'd all bow their head and beating the chest and everything. And I'm looking up over the 35-foot statue of Jesus, and I'm thinking, this is meant to be joyous. What on earth, what are we doing here if this isn't joyous? And, like at 5 years old, I just decided that, and there's nothing wrong, folks, doing 9-to-5 work. I did it for a long time, but I decided that I was going to find a way to live the kind of life that I wanted to live, and the way that you did. Because I've got to ask you, would you be willing to come back on next week to continue this show?
Yeah.
Because I think there's so much to unpack. Again, you're the first one that I've ever asked to do that. But I think so much more to unpack. And I think, we're all about going deeper for sure. Just before we wrap up the show, folks, we are going to get to some questions. I know we're running longer, but hey, this is worth it. Dr. Adrian says hello from California. We've got all sorts of different people saying hello. Here we got Bubba, have a blessed day. Let's see. I'm assuming this may be for me. It could be for both of us. Hearing your accent always puts a smile on my face. Have a good day to you both. Yep, absolutely. Who else we got? We got Patricia. A lot of people loving this. Thank you for the love, folks. Really, really appreciate that. Patricia's just writing an essay here. Thank you for sharing. We have got an interesting question here, though, that we can potentially answer, but then also to maybe look at into next week. What advice would you give to mentors of children in abusive homes? I know for me, obviously, because I'm obviously in a very different perspective, it would be different from you. I suggest that we give this some thought and come back and answer that next week. That's the first thing that we should do next week, I think. How do you feel about that?
I agree with that, and I have a great answer for that.
You've already got an answer well there, and you're ready to go.
Yes, I do. And I want to thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to coming back next week.
Absolutely. It has been an honor and pleasure. And folks, if you've enjoyed this show, do let the folks know at the Tribune. You know, if you want to sponsor the show, you can do, of course. And you can come visit myself and Cosette. You can find us online, here, there, and everywhere. And until next week, take care. God bless. And we will see you same place, same time next week. Take care.
Yes, sounds good. Thank you, John.